And so today we are excited to have with us a guest speaker, Reverend Raymont Anderson. He is the minister in Baltimore at the CSL Baltimore Center, and he is one of our younger and newer ministerial participants. He became a minister in the organization in the last few years, but he comes from a very rich background in New Thought. He is exciting. He is enthusiastic, and he is a wonderful speaker. So you're in for quite a treat today as Reverend Raymont shares with us. And he's speaking on the title, Boldly Living a New Story. Pretty exciting, huh?
Hello and good morning. So first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Bob Dean for the invitation, and thank you, CSL Midtown Atlanta, for having me. I'm looking forward to being able to visit you live and in person relatively soon, but that's a different conversation. Let's jump into this idea of what it means to boldly live a new story. And because I'm a former public school teacher and college professor, I feel the need to start us off with a quiz, a question. What do the following people have in common? Stephen King, Toni Morrison, Margaret Atwood, Octavia E. Butler, Gene Roddenberry, George Lucas, Alice Walker. What do they have in common? Feel free, if you're on Facebook or whatnot, to type in the chat. But let me tell you, let me give you that hint. They are all storytellers, just like each and every one of us. All of us are telling, writing our stories every day in how we think, how we feel, how we show up in action, how we communicate in the world, whether that is written communication, verbal communication, body communication, just how we show up. We are communicating something to the world, to those around us, to the universe itself. Question is, what are we communicating? Like, what kind of story are we living or telling? There are some stories, when we think of Shakespeare and, Gene Roddenberry and Stephen King, as I just said, there are some stories that are dramas. Some stories are comedies. Some stories are romantic comedies. Some are tragedies, the Shakespearean tragedy. Some are mysteries. Some are horror. Some are action adventure. The question is, because your life is a book, in essence, what genre is the story of your life? Now, there can be a collection, and there are various places, various chapters where, for example, in my own life, there was a chapter for sure that would very easily fall under horror because I was traumatized. I was beaten, I was abused, I was molested, so there's definitely that chapter of my life that could be described as horror, trauma, drama. And yet now, where I am living several chapters later, it's an action adventure of epic proportions where I am living the best life I have ever lived in my 55 years, ever. So no matter what the story may have at one time been, it doesn't mean that story has to be the continual, ever, never ending, ever going, ongoing drama, tragedy, etc. We get to change it in the same way that we don't have to eat the same peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day. We get to change what we eat. We get to change what we drink. We get to change what we wear. We get to change how we live. So that brings us to the next question of what kind of stories do we want to? What kind of story do we choose to tell or live? In other words, is your story, is your life playing out in a way, showing up in a way that matches your desire? If yes, bravo, keep it going. If not, or if not this and so much greater, because it could be good, but if spirit is ever expanding consciousness, and it is, then our lives our ever expanding goodness, ever expanding perfection, ever expanding love, ever expanding joy, ever expanding bliss when we live from that space. So this and something greater. But the question is, are we willing, are we ready, are we willing to rewrite, to edit, to craft a bold, see there's that word, a bold new story? Because there are many of us, if we're going to be honest, we are comfortable being in the background. We are comfortable being the silent partner. We are comfortable dimming our light. We are comfortable blending into the background. We're comfortable with that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if we're doing it because we are playing small, or we're doing it because, well, I don't really feel like I don't have anything to contribute. Who wants to see me? Then that is not stepping into living life boldly. That which spirit is, that which God is incarnating, expressing itself in, through, and as each one of us. As Ernest Holmes said, God in me, as me, is me. That spirit, that power, that presence doesn't play small. It loves fully. It demonstrates fully. It expresses fully. And what it is, we are. So when we look at why am I receding into the background? Is it because I am playing small? Then it's time for me to change the channel and step forward and live more boldly. But let's pause for a second and ask, well, what is living? What does it mean to be alive? Because we cannot truly live a bold new story if we're not clear on what it means to live. So the etymology of life is when something corporeal, a corporeal existence is animated, it's in motion. So let's understand, God is life. There is only one life, and that life is God. And what it is motion. It moves. Why do we say faith without works? Faith without action. Faith without rolling up thy sleeves. Treat and move your feet. So life is about movement. It's about action. It's about how we show up. Not just what we think, because thoughts, yes, thoughts are things, but thinking, I could think I want chocolate cake after dinner. But until I make a phone call, till I contact Grubhub, till I get in the car and go get chocolate cake or get in the kitchen and bake chocolate cake, just thinking it by itself isn't going to make it show up. So I treat, I pray, I anchor in consciousness, and then I move. Synonyms for this thing called life are being, beingness, creation, growth, vitality, zest, and enthusiasm. And because our lives are stories, let's examine this idea of the etymology of story. A story is how we are connected to one another. It is a narration of something that is happening. So the moment I tell you a story, the moment I narrate what happened in my life when I was 10, I am telling a story. And based on how I tell that, how I narrate it, how I give account of it, gives you insight into the consciousness, the paradigms that I am currently holding regarding it. How am I choosing? How are we choosing to show up? How are we choosing to narrate this energetic presence that is spirit, that is showing up as us? How do we speak about it? How do we feel about it? How do we demonstrate it in every conversation we have, every interaction we have, every email we send? How are we living this presence? Because there is nothing that happens in isolation. Octavia E. Butler said that all that you touch, you change. And all that you change, changes you. The only lasting change is truth. Or the only lasting truth is change, because God is change. The law of reciprocity, the law of what you sow, so shall you reap. The law of circulation, all that you touch with what you see, with what you hear, with what you embrace, with what you think, with what you feel. All that you touch, you change. And in return, the law of reciprocity gives, as you sow, it gives back to you. As you change the soil by planting seeds, it changes you. As you sow into the law of mind in action, it changes you back. Nothing happens in isolation. That which spirit is life itself. One mind, God. No man, no being, no person is an island unto themselves. Because even that island sitting out in the middle of the ocean is connected to the water, is connected to the earth. It's still connected. It may look like it's out in the middle of nowhere, but it's in the middle of everywhere, because as Voltaire said, God is a circle whose circumference is nowhere, whose center is everywhere. Therefore, that island is the very center of God. Right where you are sitting, the very center of God. There is nothing other than what spirit is. There can't be, this is the center of God, and this is the outside fringe of. It's all the very center of spirit. There is nowhere else. There is nothing else. So the question is, how am I engaging this? So 5 steps to how we can live a bold new story like never before. Step number 1, identify with great clarity. And I mean great clarity. What is it that we desire to experience? Like, I don't really talk about manifesting anymore or co-creating anymore or attracting, law of attraction. It's about, what do I want to experience? Because when I focus on the experience, then I immediately show up differently so that this experience is what I experience. So with great clarity, what is it that we desire to experience while being certain not to bypass or deny grief, sadness, pain, any of that stuff? This life is not about transcending them and becoming so heavenly minded that we are no earthly good. It's all part of the rich experience. My mother, a year ago on Father's Day, made her transition, right? And so where I am right now, approaching the anniversary of her transition, I feel the grief. And yet I also feel the great joy and happiness and bliss of knowing I am living a life on purpose, knowing that I am fulfilling this legacy that she wanted me to live and live life abundantly. So while feeling the grief, I also feel and experience great joy and ecstasy. Both and, not either or. With great clarity, what do we desire to experience? Being mindful that Raymond Charles Barker said, all creation starts with desire. God desired self-expression, and the cosmos was born into creation. The desires of your heart are the possibilities. Breathe on that. The desires of your heart are the possibilities that can be manifested, can be experienced as your experience. Because there is no your heart and God's heart as 2 separate hearts. There is only one mind. That mind is God. That mind is my mind now. There is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is my life now. There is only one will and one desire, God's will. That will and desire is my will and desire right now. All creation starts with a desire. So with great clarity, determine what is it that you desire to experience. Breathe. Step number 2, with great honesty, look at your life, look at our lives and ask, what is currently prohibiting, blocking, like whatever word you want to use, what is denying the opportunity? Are there past beliefs, paradigms, consciousnesses, memories, traumas? Are there people? Relationships, situations that are inspiring us to tell that same old story of yesteryear. The same old story of, well, I'm broke, I'm poor, I'm poverty stricken, I'm sick, I'm ill, I'm destitute, I am a victim, whatever that story is. Whatever that story is. What is it that is inspiring us to continue to tell that story? Because until we get clear on that, we're not going to shift. Remember that, and it's often misattributed to Einstein, but remember this quote that says, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing while thinking you're going to get a different result. Getting on the merry-go-round of life, thinking that somehow this merry-go-round is going to get you from point A to point B. And it's not. So we have to have clarity to realize what do we need to surrender? What do we need to release? What do we need to shift to move from chapter 1? Do we not have to turn the page? Do we not have to move from this volume to volume number 2 and close the book and reopen a new book? Whatever that is, the process is there. Mark Nepo said, in many ways, our stories are part of one story. Our pain is the pain of one pain. Our lives, or our surprise at the beauty and fragility of life, is part of one chorus of awe. Right? We are all interconnected. Remember, there is no island. We are all connected. Therefore, step number 3 is be aware that you play a part in someone else's story. So remember, stage 2 was, am I being affected by other people's situations or things? Well, let's flip that. Am I causing drama, trauma, pain, and such in someone else's life where I now am the thing they need to release? Oops. Am I the villain in their story? Oops. Am I the one that they're trying to throw a bucket of water on so I dissolve? Because what I bring to them is, oh, here he comes. Shh, shh. Every time he shows up, he's always, he's criticism and judgment or whatever that is. What role are we playing in the stories of others, including the collective story of humanity? So what is happening in Atlanta doesn't happen in Atlanta alone. What is happening in Baltimore doesn't happen in Baltimore alone. What is happening on earth doesn't happen on earth alone. There is one power and one presence, and what happens in one space of it ripples throughout all of creation. So what role are we playing in that? Your story, my story, the stories of the collection of people that we have met and never met. Nonetheless, we are intimately interconnected because God is one. Number 4, step number 4 to building, crafting, experiencing this bold new life. Identify what practices, spiritual practices, will form the foundation upon which this bold new life will spring forth. What will ground you that your daily living is now boldly going where your life may have never gone before, that you may live long and prosper, for you know and understand that you are spirit in expression. You are the infinite I am that is ever becoming more and more and more. What is the foundation upon which you live, move, and have your beingness? What are your practices? Do you forgive? And when I say forgive, I'm not talking about that syrupy, but we're spiritual people and we're supposed to forgive everybody. No. But no. I'm talking about the kind of forgiveness that simply says, it is not about the person or the situation that has caused me harm. It is not about the snake that bit me. It's about the venom that is moving through my system and getting that venom out. Because if a snake bites you, it doesn't matter what you do to the snake. You can kill it, you can bury it, you can burn it, you can throw it 100 miles away. That doesn't change the venom that is moving in your body. Forgiveness is getting that venom out. Healing yourself. Is that a practice that keeps you grounded? Active and conscious prayer. Our thoughts are prayers and we are always praying. But are we always praying consciously? Are we always praying actively from the awareness that God in me, as me, is me? When we are communicating with others, do we communicate mindfully, being aware that the words I use, how are they landing or impacting another being? Because the moment I tell someone who is experiencing some great hardship, well, you probably attracted this because you're holding it in your consciousness. So I'm just shaming the victim now. Being mindful of our communication. How am I using the words that communicate a concept or an idea? Do so with compassion and in a mindful manner. Am I willing to have holy confrontation and blessed boundaries? Sometimes we are invited to call something out. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, if I'm not mistaken, in the letters from a Birmingham jail, he referenced the church is always moving from being the tail light rather than the headlight. Sometimes we are called to confront what is going on in the world, in our lives, in a relationship. Confront it, because until we confront it, until we bring truth to this situation, it's not going to be healed. Because what do we say? There is nothing that needs to be healed, only truth to be revealed. So until I am ready to confront and bring truth to it, it doesn't change. Am I willing and able to set up boundaries, blessed boundaries? Am I willing to do overall self-care? Am I willing to, step number 5, am I willing to live it, be it, and do it? Ernest Holmes said, today you are going to take your life in your own hands, your own consciousness, your own way of being, by realizing that God is ever with you, moving through you, showing up as you. It is all that is. So are we willing to put this process into practice? Are we willing to do this thing called living more abundantly? Showing up as, having the audacity to live a bold new story, having the audacity to speak truth, having the audacity, the boldness, the fervor, the enthusiasm, and the inspiration to walk the walk, to recognize love, joy, wonder, and bring that to every interaction that we have. So we breathe and we prepare as I ground us in spiritual mind treatment, recognizing that we ground into this breath. We recognize this breath. We recognize that this breath is itself a spiritual practice, because this breath can only be breathed right now. I can't rebreathe a breath from yesterday. I can't breathe tomorrow's breath. I can't save a breath for a rainy day. I can only breathe right here and right now, this present moment. This breath is also operated by the body's intelligence, because neither I nor you tell our lungs to expand or contract. The body's intelligence does that on its own. But ultimately, this is the surrendering and the allowing that which God is to breathe itself as this divine body temple, recognizing this, breathing this, grounding in this truth. I speak what I know, that all that is divine. It is spirit. It is God. And because that is the very foundation upon which all shows up, then I know that when there is discord, disharmony, anything in the world, what does our declaration of principles say? Number 5 says, we believe that the ultimate goal of life to be a complete emancipation from every discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. So when we see discord, we bring harmony. When we see dis-ease, we bring ease and grace through our consciousness and our words and our feelings and our actions, because in this moment we are living, moving, and having our beingness, telling, living, showing, demonstrating a bold new story. And it is this individual story that ripples through the collective and changes the collective story. And the collective story that I am grounding and anchoring into right now is the collective story of a world that works for all. Knowing this, then I know that every tree, every blade of grass, every grain of sand, every shoe, every jacket, every individual person, every building, every meal, Every song, every word, every thought, and every deed is vibrating with the very consciousness of spirit itself. Down to the molecular level, every quantum particle and wave is God, is divine, is this infinite holy holiness. And so right now, as I speak these words, knowing that these are not simply my words, just as Judy's words weren't simply Judy's words, but that they are the words of God itself, Spirit itself, the universe itself, speaking through itself, speaking about itself. And now placing these words, this prayer, this treatment back into the law of itself, the law of mind and action that says yes, and returns unto each of us accordingly. So I know that this prayer is returned unto me accordingly. Meaning, in the mind of God, this prayer is fully formed and fully functioning. That means this prayer in the mind of God is answered prayer. Answered. The bold new story is right now. Answered. A world that works for all right now. Answered. And because it is answered, I allow it to be and do what it does. I step back and I marvel at the amazing way that God shows itself. And together we declare this. We touch and agree, and we together say, and so it is.